Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. People who have claimed to have seen cryptids or unknown creatures. What's your story? Please remember to like, share, comment, hype, listen, and ask for shoutouts, and subscribe.
Story about my dad. He told us this one a lot. When he was a kid, he'd ride his bike on a gravel road about 2 kilometers to get to school. He lived in the country, and this was in the mid-50s. He said he was riding his bike home when a short distance ahead, he saw a really tall, hairy monkey walk out of the trees and cross the road. He thought a gorilla or something escaped from the zoo, because that's the only thing he could think that made any sense. I asked him if he was scared, and he said, "No, I always took my gun to school with me." My entire childhood, my father and I used to take late-night walks due to his insomnia from shift work. Our neighborhood is considered very safe and ultimately was an urban neighborhood, besides one of the roads toward the back of the neighborhood being lined with thick forest for about a mile and a quarter deep, which made a circle back in itself. All of these walks are very dear memories of mine, except one, and it ended being the last one. Along the road with the tree line, there was a single streetlight to illuminate a small plot of land that someone owned but was very overgrown and ill-kept. It was very common for us to walk this road to enjoy the sounds of the forest, the lack of illumination, and the ease of circling back. One ordinary night, as we were walking and making conversation, my father abruptly stops, pulls me close, puts a hand over my mouth, crouches with me and points toward a single illuminated plot roughly 100 yards away. At first I didn't see anything and thought he was pulling my leg, but just as I began to protest his grasp, I see a very small humanoid figure roughly 3 feet in height, scrawny with long limbs, materialize out of the plot's brush line and cautiously take in its surroundings before signaling toward the brush. After a few seconds, 2 other small humanoid figures materialize as well. After a brief moment of what looked to be a discussion, all 3 made a dash for the forest tree line. Once this happened, my father picked me up, threw me over his shoulder, and made a break for our home, which was roughly half a mile back. Mind you, my father is 6'5", 220 pounds, and I was roughly 120 pounds at the time, and he never showed signs of slowing due to his fear and adrenaline. After this night, we never took late-night walks. He installed 4 bright motion detection lights around our acre plot and brought home a dog. The few times I've tried bringing it up, he doesn't want to discuss, and made it clear he never wanted to. Those figures still give me the chills, and the image of the 3 huddled together is very vivid 15 years later. One night, my husband and I were driving home from somewhere. I think it was a friend's house, but I don't remember. And we were taking some back roads when suddenly this creature ran out in front of our car, and we had to slam on the brakes to avoid hitting it as it darted across the road into the woods. Its body looked like a human running on all 4s, but it was way too fast to be human, and the head was like a boar's. It had tusks. We both saw the same thing, and were rightly freaked out about it. Later we dubbed it Man-Bear-Pig, LOL. So this happened to my son when he was 17 years old. We lived in New Mexico at the time. My son, Cody, was riding along with his friends Drew and Alex. They were in Drew's truck and Drew was driving. It was night and they were heading to Drew's house. Drew lived out in the country, so the road they were on was isolated and surrounded by desert. In fact, that whole area is flat and mostly dirt. As they're driving along, they see a man standing in the middle of the road. Drew slows down and they all expect the guy to move off to the side. The guy doesn't move. He just stands there. Drew slows to a stop. The guy standing just outside the light from the headlights. He's wearing jeans and some sort of long-sleeve shirt. They couldn't make out the features of the guy's face, but they could tell he was facing them. Nobody moves for a few seconds. The The kids start to talk about going around him, but aren't sure if they should pass by this guy or turn around and go another way. Suddenly, the guy drops to all fours and starts running toward the truck. All the kids start screaming. Drew slams the truck into reverse and floors it. Now they're going backwards on this dark country road, and this guy is chasing them on all fours, and he's keeping up with the truck. Drew goes faster, and finally the guy drops out of sight. Drew turns the truck around, and they all came back to our house. I was in the living room when they came running in, slammed and locked the door, and went tearing up the stairs to Cody's room. I went up to see what was going on, and this is when they told me the story. I've never seen them so pale and frightened. They were completely freaked out. This happened on a Friday night around 8 p.m. These were kids that normally would rather be anywhere except home on a weekend. That weekend, they stayed at our place the whole time. They didn't go out at all, and then only left because they had school on Monday. It took a month before they wanted to go out again at night. They would go anywhere during the day, but at night they usually gathered at our house. After a little research, they all agreed that it was a skinwalker. Even to this day, if I bring up that night, Cody and his friends will get really quiet and look scared. It took a long time for them to get past it, and they still think that talking about it will make it come back. I was camping with some friends on a piece of privately owned land that bordered a national forest. We had our tents set up at the back of the fence-cleared part of the property. The large mesh window of my tent was facing out toward the forest. I woke up in the middle of the night feeling as if somebody was up and about. I was looking out the window and saw a dark, from a head-to-toe humanish-shaped figure lean away from a tree and slowly lean back behind the tree. It kept doing it for a few minutes, as if it was checking out our camp. I woke my boyfriend up and told him I thought someone was out in the forest behind us. He looked, but only saw a glimpse of a dark figure running off deeper into the woods. Nobody from our camp had been out there or out of the tent. There were no neighbors anywhere close, and the closest campgrounds and hiking trails were also pretty far away.
So I'll give you a quick one for me. 2 years ago, my wife and I were, before we were married, we were kayaking on the north shore of Long Island, near our house. And we're going around this turn, and we've been there a bunch of times before. And she's like, hey, what is that over there? And I look over, and it looked like this gelatinous black mass. And this is broad daylight, kind of like moving along the rocks on the edge of someone's property. This is a really high-end area. So I was like, I don't know, like it looked like an alien symbiote. I know it sounds ridiculous, right? So I'm kind of laughing, but I did feel that little bit of like hair standing up on the back of my neck and everything. So we, like humans, we go over to the symbiote alien that's probably going to eat us. And as we get closer and closer, it still has the appearance like it's moving. And like, what the hell is it? It's not a jellyfish. It was like jet black, but like shiny. It was weird. And after about 10 minutes of going that direction, we get close enough to see that it was in fact a bunch of like mylar balloons that somehow turned into this like amalgamation of like a jellyfish looking thing against the rocks. It was not a cryptid or an alien, and it has a very simple story, but it did make me like come alive for a moment. So that's it. Have a good one, everybody.
I was walking home one night at about 3 a.m. About a block from my house, down the road, I saw an inhumanly tall figure in what appeared to be bright white cloth. I don't believe in ghosts and stuff. I made a comment about this, and someone said it sounded like a Fresno nightcrawler. What bothers me, though, is that if nightcrawlers are real, this one was easily almost 9 feet tall, where most reports see them at no taller than 4, and one was at 6. It really didn't do anything besides walk across the lawns of the houses. By the time I got down the road, it was long gone. Though I did have the feeling I was being followed or watched the rest of the walk home. Edit. Gonna say what I saw wasn't a nightcrawler, but something else. Not sure what it was to begin with, though. I don't know if I saw something or not. To back up a bit, my fairly non-religious, definitely non-spiritual mother claims to have been haunted for several decades. She says there's a ghost of an old man who stands next to her bed and silently screams. Sometimes he disappears for months, Sometimes he shows up 3 or 4 times a week. She says he was around when I was a kid, but she never mentioned him to me or my sister until we were grown and moved out, so we wouldn't be scared. He also followed us on a 300-mile move to another state, but it took him a year and a half, like a dog who got lost at an interstate rest stop. My non-practicing Catholic stepdad used to laugh when she mentioned the ghost. About 10 years ago, he switched to saying he'd seen him. My mom considers him annoying. She's often complained that she wishes that damn ghost would just let me sleep. Frank just confirms that sometimes he wakes up to an old man leaning over the bed, silently screaming. I have a distinct memory of going home from college, hanging with old friends, drinking, and waking up in the middle of the night needing to piss. For a split second as I swung out of bed, I remember seeing a scrawny old man with dark brown hair, with his mouth wide open, but I didn't hear anything. I sprang out right where he was standing, moving before my eyes even opened. He was gone, and I wrote it off to beer, weed, and the power of suggestion, and haven't spent many nights at my folks' house since, and never saw anything else. But sometimes I wonder if the ghost finally decided after 19 years I was old enough to haunt, only to get freaked out when I jumped through him with a piss boner. A while back I lived way out in the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma. Due to coyotes and other animals, I'd always go outside with a knife or machete. Well, one night I was taking out the trash. I was 11 or 12 at the time. The trash can was a good 50 feet from the house, surrounded by bushes and shrubs. Well, I put the trash in the can and went to head back when something reached from the shrubs and latched onto my ankle. I figured I was caught on a branch or something, so I pulled my good harder. That's when I realized that those were fingers wrapped around my ankle, and that they were far too long to be human. I swung the machete at whatever was grabbing me, and I heard the most blood-curdling screech I've ever heard. I ran to the house. It was one of those shipping container-shaped trailers. The thing about those trailers is, you get a hole in the side panel, and animals can get trapped under it. I heard it under the house that night. Sounded like a big dog or something. Never found out what it was, luckily. When I was a young teen, I was sitting on the floor in my mom's bedroom playing Animal Crossing when it got dark out. I didn't have a light on because I was in there for several daylight hours, so when it got dark, I only had the hallway light. I remember looking out the window to my left because I saw some movement and seeing nothing, just a tree branch next to my porch slightly shaking. I brushed it off, but then remembered we didn't have any trees in our backyard. It was about half a mile of old farmland. I stared at that branch, trying to figure out where it was coming from, and my eyes trailed it until it came to an end against a white oval-like surface. I was squinting to see what it was. When it moved, it turned, looked at me, and then slowly lumbered off. I figured I'd seen a deer with some kind of color mutation, and that my eyes just messed with me because I didn't have my glasses on. We normally had a herd or two of deer that grazed in the backyard. It wasn't until later I realized that none of the herds showed up during the time I saw whatever it was. None of the deer had a color mutation either, at least the regulars didn't. I ignored it for a few days, but then about a week later I was sleeping when I woke up in the middle of the night. I didn't know what woke me up, but I have a large window next to my bed that I leave the blinds up on because my dog likes looking out. I look at my dog and he's on alert, looking out the window. I grabbed my glasses and looked where he was fixated on and saw the thing again. I got a better look at it this time, but it had fur so black that its body wasn't really visible, only having the light of the moon garage light off to the side. I figured I was dreaming or something, but as it moved across my yard, back toward the empty field, my dog's head tracked it. My dog was shivering slightly, and normally he barks at the smallest things, but he seemed like he was trying to be quiet. I grabbed my sketchbook that was on the dresser next to my bed and quickly drew what I saw. I never felt scared of whatever it was, just kind of peaceful in a way. It seemed like it was just patrolling the area, and I happened to catch it on its nightly rounds. When I was 5 in 1995, I woke up on several occasions to find my toys going nuts around the room. I had a sizable collection of little toy matchbox cars that I usually left lying around on one of those little mats we all had with the streets, etc. I would wake up from noise and turn over to see my cars moving around, suddenly stop, with the momentum still carrying them a ways. I once woke up in time to see one of them riding off the other bed in the room, land on the floor, and I remember sitting bolt upright and watching as it drove off the bed, landed on its roof on the ground, wheels spinning. I even got woken up one night by a little plastic Indian from a Cowboys and Indians set hitting me in the face. I was never freaked out by it because before that, my parents told me my toys came to life at night and looked after me. I was terrified of the dark. I'm 28 now, and I've always wondered what happened in that room. Was it a ghost? Was I moving them telepathically in my sleep with the pure power of belief? Were my toys actually coming to life? Or was I simply having super realistic dreams? The older I get, the more I just start to believe that final theory, but sometimes I wonder, anybody else had an experience like this? I never believed in ghosts until this happened. When I was a missionary in Chile some years ago, I lived in a small town called Macali, in the little house with a few other sister missionaries. The house seemed like it had started small, like one room small, in maybe the 50s, and been added as the years went on. A hall here, a bathroom with plumbing there. The weird thing about this house was that at around 3 a.m. every single night the air would change. It felt like something was terribly wrong, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. The only way I've been able to verbalize it is spiritual nausea, like severe motion sickness, but not in my body, rather in my heart. Then we would hear children's running footsteps and laughter in the hall. None of us dared to leave our rooms in the wee hours of the morning, because once you open the door to the hall, that nauseous feeling multiplied tenfold. I would have chalked it up to stress dreams, but everyone experienced the same things. We thought it might be our imagination, so we decided not to tell the next group of missionaries about La Niña. They asked about it anyway, after being awakened by her laughter. Other weird things happened at night too. One missionary felt thin, disembodied hands touching her back. I experienced sleep paralysis and saw a tall, antlered figure staring at me in bed. Children's toys appeared in the hall. Some of our neighbors told us there was a nearby witch who didn't like us, and we occasionally found dead animals in the yard. Whether it was her doing, or a carbon monoxide problem, or an actual haunting, I have no idea. But it was distracting us from sleep enough to make us useless during the day. House blessings and prayers did nothing. Eventually, we were authorized to change apartments, and the events stopped. I don't think whatever it was meant any real harm, but I do think it desperately wanted to be noticed. I was walking to meet up with my friend. I live in Connecticut, so as far as I knew, there was nothing here that could be a cryptic or unknown to us. Well, I was walking at around 11 p.m., go meet up with my friend to chill for a little. I approached this house, specifically the garage, because I cut through the yard. As I came closer to the garage, I noticed my friend. It was him. I did our call, which a ch-ch sound, and this thing just looked at me with its face. Every detail was the same, and it was a full moon that night, so I could see him very clearly. I got closer, called his name, and it, gave no response. I just thought he was being a freak and fucking with me, so I continued on my way and Snapchatted him, asking what the hell he was doing. He shortly sent a Snapchat picture of him in a bowling alley in a town about 30 minutes away. This was all within 5 to 10 minutes of the sighting. I never saw anything again, but from then on, I wasn't much of a night person anymore. I still can't shake the eerie and dreadful feeling I had when I saw that thing. I tend to not talk about the subject because of how much it genuinely scares me. I still can't think of what the thing was, but it mocked the appearance of my friend. This experience has seriously freaked me out, and I still refuse to walk alone at night. My grandmother had a story from the late 50s driving north on a paved 2-lane road lined with small trees and brush with my great-aunt and one of my uncles, Ron, who was about 2 years old at the time and was in the back seat. They rounded a turn while climbing a series of switchbacks up a hill. Now this is from memory because she passed away about 7 years ago now. I smelled it before I saw it. As they approached, it was standing beside the road, down a couple of feet in a ditch, but it was still taller than the car by a couple of feet. When her sister sees it, she grabs her by her arm and yells, "Look out, Barbara, it's a bear." And she replied, "That ain't no bear." It stood there and they passed it. It looked like a very large hairy man with hair all over its face, only its ears, lips, and eyelids lacked hair. But what struck here as most interesting was that it had, or appeared to have had, no neck. Its head sat upon its shoulders in a strange way. While watching them, it turned its whole body, and his hair was brown and matted like a stray dog. After they passed, she watched it in the rearview mirror. It stepped up onto the ditch at the side of the road, and in one large step, it stepped all the way to the center line of the road, and in one more step, it cleared the road into the ditch on the other side of the road, and within 3 steps, it had cleared 20 feet into the brush and trees and disappeared from sight. This whole time, she said her sister was holding her arm, crying and jabbering away like a mental patient, and that they had both pissed in their seats. Ron was in the back seat, slept through it. I used to live in a very old farmhouse. I was asleep at the time, but my sister woke up around 3 a.m. to get ready for work. She worked at my uncle's dairy farm, so early start. She walked past my room and said she heard very creepy, deep laughing. I sleep in silence and wasn't awake at the time. She brought this up to me when I told her I woke up bleeding due to long scratches down my back and random bruises on my legs. Also had instances of hearing footsteps in my room when it was just me and things falling off of shelves on their own. Lots of creaking and scratching noises coming from the ceiling, but I figured that was just mice or bats in the attic. I had horrible insomnia all through my life and often woke up with bruises and scratches, but this was the first time they had bled. I always thought I did it to myself in my sleep. All of it stopped instantly when we moved 5 years ago. No more scratches, no more bruises, no more insomnia. I was with my dad on a motorcycle trip and stopped somewhere between Idaho and Washington at a rest stop. We were stretching our legs and I decided to walk a bit through the woods at the edge of the rest stop. I went a little farther than I originally planned and decided I should go back. That's when I noticed a really old car in the trees, like 1930s. My dad and I are car buffs, so I went back to tell him about it and we decided to go all the way back in so he could see it himself. It took forever to find it again. It was really far deep in the woods. We got close to it, closer than I originally had the first time, and we could tell something was wrong. The 4 doors had been ripped off and were laying in the dirt around the car, and the entire interior was filled with sticks like a nest. It was totally filled with sticks, and they were held together with a mixture of mud and what smelled like poop. It smelled absolutely awful. It was also full of hair. We got the creepiest feeling and ran out of there as fast as we could. Never went back, and I have no idea what would have made a nest like that inside a car. I'm a very skeptical person in nearly all aspects of life, but this is something I've never been able to wrap my head around. In the winter of 2008, there was a massive snowstorm across the inland northwest US. I was at a house party with a bunch of neighborhood kids, where we heard that school would be canceled for the following day. In celebration, a friend and I decided to head across my house to get some Transformer toys, because that's what kids do. When we started to cross the street, I noticed large, spinning lights in the clouds. These lights weren't the size of lights you might see on a plane in a fog. They were much brighter and they were spinning. I reasoned that it was just giant flying saucers with spinning lights hovering above a section of the neighborhood. I yelled at my friend to hurry up and run to my house, trying to get indoors quickly. When we came back outside, there was nothing, just the dark, cloudy sky. To this day, I have no rational reason or explanation for what I saw, and I don't know if my old friend even remembers. When I was around 10 to 12, I was up at my grandparents' camp in the Adirondacks for the weekend. I shared a room with my younger brother, and I woke up one morning and looked out the bedroom window right behind the headrest. The camp was located right on the edge of the woods. It was pretty much up a trail that leads to the edge of the deeper part of the woods, less inhabited by people, and probably 100 to 200 feet away were a group of turkeys wandering around the forest floor. I grew up going hunting with my dad, so I knew what turkeys look like in the woods and what their size roughly was. However, right next to the turkeys, standing on a fallen tree, was what looked like a mix of a hawk and a turkey, but with a humanoid shape. It was probably about 6 to 8 feet tall and looked to have a massive wingspan. Obviously, all of my size estimates are based on preteen me. However, it was right next to turkeys, and I was very familiar with the size of the turkeys. This was much larger and semi-humanoid. I never told anyone about it, kinda just woke up and went to eat breakfast, a little too stunned to process that what I just saw I actually saw. And I was definitely fully awake as I watched it for a few minutes, just watched the turkey wander. This happened when I was around 7 years old. My brother a couple years older. My family and I just returned from a movie, so it was dark out. We lived basically in the country and were surrounded by fields, but there was an edge of tall grass at our yard that met it. Anyway, we got out of the car and my brother and I see something in the tall grass, a head with ears and 2 reflective eyes. We thought it was a deer, so we both run to the edge of the field to scare it because we're dumb kids. Well, unlike how a deer should normally respond, this creature didn't run. This creature crouched. I've never had all my instincts kick in like they did. My adrenaline was high and I booked it out of there. I remember looking back and that silhouetted creature was still dead, with 2 eyes reflecting the light from the house. Thinking back, it sounds a lot like a large cat, but those were not native to the area. So if it was that one, would have to have escaped or wandered very far. Also, I turned my back on it, which is bad to do with back cats. That's my understanding, at least. I also considered that since I was able to see 2 eyes reflecting at the same time, that it was a predator of some kind. This happened when I was about 13 or so, and I've told this story a million times, and it always gives me chills. Me and 4 other friends would always camp in my friend's woods, and one weekend we decided to camp like we always did. We discovered those Itmo pack of flares you could buy at Walmart, and would just always burn stuff with them for fun and dick around with them. I had some really shitty machete, and my friend asked if he could take the flare to it and hit it with a hammer and warp it and all that. Of course, I didn't care because it was a cheap machete. So while he's doing that, and we're all watching, I hear something close to us. And I look, and it had to be at least 7 to 8 feet tall, but where it was night, all I could see was an eye walking through the shadows, which also looked red, but may have been due to staring at the flare. I get up and I'm like, guys, and everyone was confused until a tree shook right behind my friend. We all group up and are absolutely terrified. One of my friends decided to call his mom and get the out of there, which was the smartest thing any of us could have done. While 3 of them left to take the friend, leaving back to the road, me and another one stayed back in the tent. While sitting in the tent, we heard something outside and were like, okay, they're just fucking with us. But I swear to God, a finger goes along the side of the tent like it's almost poking through the tent, just as strolling down the side toward the front. So I call my friend back at the road and say, hey dude, where are you at? Expecting to hear him outside the tent, and he said at home, which is about 5 minutes from the campsite, and I almost called bullshit till I heard his little brother on the phone. I don't remember anything else from that night, but remember that whole scenario perfectly, and we never had anything like that happen again, but it's definitely the most terrifying experience I've had in my life. My grandparents had a vacation cabin in the Jersey Pine Barrens, and my parents would send me out every year. I lived in Las Vegas at the time over summer vacation to visit. The last time I was there, I was 8 in 1982. It was about 11 or so at night. Grandparents are in bed, and I'm reading Archie comic books. I still remember what I was reading, lol, by flashlight while I hear the most god-awful scream come from outside. That scared the crap out of me because I had no idea what it was. I've heard mountain lions and coyotes before, and that scream definitely didn't come from one of those. I turned the flashlight off, and it's so quiet in the cabin you could hear a rat piss on a cotton. I hear the scream again, and this time it sounds like it's right outside my bedroom window. I'm almost pissing myself by this point when I hear a snuffing coming from right outside the window, and something I can only describe as pebbles being tossed or rolled on the roof. There's no way in hell I'm looking, so I run and wake up Grandpa. He sees the terror in my face and grabs the light and checks the perimeter of the cabin. He comes back and says he couldn't see or hear anything. Needless to say, I sleep in their bed that night, lol. In the morning, we go outside and look under the window, and sure enough, you can make out hoof prints about the size of a fist coming from the woods and right up to the window. I thought it was a wild pig or something like that, until I was playing on the other side of the house and noticed a similar set of prints leading away from the house on almost an exact line from my bedroom window. I get home and tell Dad about what happened. He grew up around the Pine Barrens and what we saw, and he just nonchalantly says, "Oh, must have been the Jersey Devil." I had no idea what he was talking about at the time, but I never forgot that incident, and when I was a little older, I would spend time in the library reading books about the Jersey Devil, and it sure as hell sounds like that's whatever it was outside my window. Or it was a pig. I'd like to think it was a pig, and not some horse-goat bat hybrid that was the cursed child of a Satan worshiper or some shit. I never went back to Jersey to visit the grandparents while they still had that freaking cabin. I was almost taken by a grindy low. When I was little, like 5 or 6, we went to a park near our house that had a pond. I was always fascinated with the small creatures, water bugs, fish, algae, everything. So I was squatting down, staring at this incredible little universe, completely enchanted with it all. Suddenly, something green came out of the water and grabbed my little shoe and pulled. It happened in an instant. My foot slid forward into the water and I fell backwards onto my butt. It was back in the water with tiny splashes as fast as lightning. I blinked, then got up and ran to my mom saying, "Something grabbed my foot and tried to pull me in the water." My mother tried to console me, saying my foot simply slipped on the muck, but I know the truth. So heads up to anyone who lives in Milwaukee. The pond in Cozy Park on 7th and Lincoln has a Grandilo.